Welcome to the Open Child Pink Couch. I'm really pleased to welcome Rocky Racco to the couch. And Rocky, on the corporate side of the business, which is your bread and butter, I want you to talk to me a little bit about why it is that I have the impression you're the unsung heroes of the travel industry. We do so much on the leisure side. It's such a big part of our mindset, but corporate is huge. 4.2 billion in Canada?
That's correct. First of all, Nina, thank you so much for inviting me to have this opportunity to have this conversation with yourself. Most definitely, corporate travel in Canada is definitely probably the lion's share of the travel spend.
Right.
And as you're indicating, it's something that doesn't get a lot of attention because it doesn't have that marketing and advertising component to it.
Right.
It's more of a TMC, corporate client, corporate travel relationship. So it's a much more tight, closed relationship that doesn't really involve that much marketing.
It's not the sexy side.
It's not the sexy side, but it's definitely plays a very, very important role. And you know, from globalization, connecting businesses, connecting communities, doing a lot of good things in the world, that, you know, the corporate travel is definitely an important aspect of travel.
And I would imagine that for the airlines, those billions are pretty damn sexy.
Yeah, absolutely. The travelers that fill the front of the bus is,
Right.
I would say 80-90% are corporate travelers, and the rest of the 10-20% are affluent travelers, or we probably have to leave a certain percentage that are traveling on frequent flyer miles. But a lot of the frequent flyer miles are collected through people's corporate travels. So it all circles back to the corporate travel.
Rocky, how would you characterize your relationship with the airlines? Because you're an important player. They're going to want to listen to what you have to say, but they're also trying to protect their revenue base. So I always wonder, how does that work?
Over the years, and TTI has been in business for 50 years, I mean, we've had a whole slew of relationships with different airlines at different stages. Some very challenging and some very collaborative. First of all, in Canada, we should be very happy and proud of the fact that we have three excellent airlines in that: Air Canada, WestJet, and Porter.
So true. So true.
They all have very, very unique brands, and they all provide a great service and great offerings. What I find challenging in this marketplace is some of the airlines, as we know, are having record profits. Their share value at an all-time high. And instead of them being much more generous or willing to share their financial gains, it seems now that they're actually pulling back and being much more tight-fisted, and also a little bit more restrictive and keeping us more contained. The rise of debit memos, the rise of, you know, the lack of flexibility in looking after our asks are becoming challenged with some carriers. On the other hand, there's a lot of carriers that truly value what we do for them, and therefore they're more apt to accommodating our request. In not only are they saying yes, but they're saying yes in a very timely manner, because we obviously operate in a very fast-paced environment.
Right.
And getting back to our clients with answers, and sometimes even if the answer is no, that's fine, at least we can deal with it. But sometimes when you get, you know, strung along, and then find out that the answer is not a favorable answer, it kind of adds a little bit of, you know, it makes the messaging back to our clients that much more difficult.
I can see that.
But definitely, there's you know, more and more airlines that are successful. More airlines are interested in coming to Canada, and so there is a lot of competition. There's a lot of opportunities. The U.S. carriers, as we know, in the last several years, they've also become extremely profitable. And as a result of that, they've made investments in their lounges. They've made investments in their aircraft. So whereas the Canadian carriers that had that edge up until a couple of years ago, now that edge has gone away. So now they have to address that, and they can't just depend on the fact that they have the best lounges and the newest aircraft, because now the big strong players, global players, can definitely say that, and much more.
So your clients aren't as resistant to flying American carriers as they used to be?
Absolutely. That's for sure the case.
So our Canadian carriers need to pay attention to that as well.
Absolutely, especially on the long haul. I mean, the
Right.
business class offerings across the Pacific, across the Atlantic, South America are fabulous, and so their price points are very competitive. Their offerings are very competitive. How they, and then when you get into their lounge environments and their destinations and their hub and spoke systems, there's a lot of opportunities out there. So
Interesting.
as much as we love our Canadian carriers, they definitely, they can't be asleep at the wheel, for sure.
Interesting. We put so much focus on the airlines, but then I always think you're also booking hotels.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that relationship and how the hotels play with you.
Yeah, I'm glad you're asking that, Nina, because up until about 10 years ago, I like many of my colleagues, have been very airline-centric. But the real opportunity to create the best client experiences is in their accommodations, in their destination experience. And there are so many wonderful hotel offerings, from the preeminent deluxe suites to the low-cost, business efficient environment to now, as we know, the Airbnbs of the world. So
Right.
there's such a range, and there's so many different opportunities, that having the relationships with the various hotel brands out there is extremely important.
Is it profitable?
Very profitable.
Good.
And again, it really comes down to competition. For example, a top brand hotel 10 years ago would open up 1 to 5 hotels a year. That same hotel brand is opening 50 to 75 high quality hotels this year, and their pipelines are full. So a lot of wealthy people, investors, look at the hotel industry as a viable investment instrument, and therefore they're putting a lot of money and resources into updating their current properties and growing their footprints. So there is a lot of inventory. There's a lot of desire to attract the right client,
Right.
and so our role is to understand, to really get to understand our client, understand their business needs, understand the purpose of the trip, and making sure that we align what their expectation is with the right property and the right room and the right amenities, and on and on.
The last thing I want to ask you, Rocky, is you're a little bit of a maverick that you're still standing independent when so many of your colleagues have now become part of the larger corporate groupings. So, not looking to sell?
No, we're definitely in a very good position. We recognize that we're probably one of the top 3 independent travel management companies in Canada, but more importantly, our unique business model, which basically caters to clients that value the high-touch service. We've always bucked the trend. We never wanted to be a commoditized player. I cringe when the large TMC competitors, when they look at a client, they look at him and how many transactions that client performs. I've never looked at a client relationship in that way. To me, it's about the client experience, about understanding the corporate culture. It's about understanding the travel policy. And it's about the traveler, experience, this safeguarding that, making sure that they have the best ROI for their company, for themselves. And let's face it, as much as travel sometimes sounds adventurous and sexy, it can really be stressful,
tedious, yeah.
and tedious, and keeps you away from your family and your comfort zone. So, making their trip comfortable is extremely important. So that being said, having the ability to be independent, even though we belong to, some very powerful networks like the BCD network and the Virtuoso network, that enables us to have all the amenities and the relationships all over the world to ensure that our clients are looked after as best possible. Having that independent status, and therefore having the ability to sit down with our clients, truly understand their needs, and being able to customize and cater a program that fits that without having to be part of this large conglomerate that basically, unfortunately, as these guys get larger, are just looking for transactions. They're just looking for volume. And that's never been our model. And now that we're bucking the trend, I actually think that we're going to your point, we're one of the last standing independence that can provide a unique level of service.
I'd like very much for you to come back in a few months if you're willing, because I have found this conversation really interesting. It's not a part of the business that I have a lot of expertise in. So thank you for sharing that with us and with our audience.
Well, this has been a delightful opportunity, and absolutely, I welcome the opportunity of sitting on your pink couch and having additional conversations.
Thanks,
So
Rocky.
thank you, Nina.